Bergeron. Okay, Dean Bergeron from Euro Parts.
Yes, how's it going?
Good. Welcome. Oh, I guess I'll just do this, Scott. What the heck? I'm right here. Well, first of all, I want to welcome Scott. Scott Patterson, who's the founder of SaabNet that I have the honor of knowing over 20-something years. And I'm Glenn Brooks. And this is the Saab and Driving Show. I want to welcome everybody to the call. And also Chris Rizon up in Dorset, Vermont. I call Chris's shop the Saab Barber Shop because people come there and, I don't know, we spend hours hanging out and having Saab conversations and enjoying the beautiful Green Mountains up in Vermont. Chris is a master Saab mechanic for over just about 30-something years. He has people traveling from all over to see him, and I have the honor of bringing my 9.5 to Chris. Oh yeah, Jack. I forgot your last name. Jack. Is it Tips or no?
My last name is Stoll.
Stoll.
Yep, S-T-O-L.
You're kind of a legendary gunslinger, so I'm always honored to have you here as a tuner. Your stories last week that people could listen to from your life of being a surfer and a Saab mechanic in Santa Cruz, kind of your soul and your whole life came through pretty strong about your philosophical base and your passion for these cars and tuning them and parts. And I'm happy to have you on again. Very happy.
It's nice to be here.
I didn't miss anybody, did I, Scott? Is that the whole crew?
Yeah, those are our guests from today. Correct.
Okay, cool. And welcome. And I guess we're going to start with Dean, and then I guess we'll open up the phone lines. And I know that, Scott, you've known Dean many, many years, and I know that eEuro has been a significant contributor, supporter of SaabNet. Did you want to say anything? Or
I would like to say something. Yeah. So
please.
I believe now that eEuro Parts is the longest running sponsor of the Saab network, and so what that means to be a sponsor of the Saab network is, they get advertising on the site, and they pay for that advertising on the site, and those payments go towards keeping the equipment up to date. This past year, I bought a brand new server for the site. Made the transfer from I think it was a 7-year-old Dell server that had been running 24/7, 365 days a year straight for 7 years, and moved it over to a faster machine, upgraded the bandwidth, the internet bandwidth, upgraded the security on the site, and all that is possible. And the time that for me to work on it is all made possible through the sponsors like eEuro Parts, and they've been a sponsor for about 20 years, and also the full site members on the site. So thank you.
Yeah, no, I guess I've been working with eEuro 20 years, and what I want to say, I want to welcome Dean from eEuro.
Great to be here.
Yeah, no, it's just great, Dean. Anytime I've called through the years, I've called eEuro, and I've gotten to some obscure sort of things. I know you make a fix, and it was some kind of dang. I wish I could. I think you might have put it on, Chris. Do you remember that there was a part that you put on from eEuro? I'm putting you on the spot here. It was a part that it was something that I got from you. I think it was made in Germany. It's a little part, and it was a bigger job. But it was like some kind of innovative fix.
Was it for a 9.5?
Maybe it had it for a 9.5. Yes.
Was it a temperature blend door? Was it a temperature blend door lever?
You're so funny. I think you said that the last time I brought it up. I don't know. I just know that someone did a temporary fix, and then you had a permanent fix. That has something to do with like a cable and like, I guess. Okay.
It's a repair kit for the shift cable on an automatic.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
So that's okay. So the first thing I want to acknowledge about eEuro is that my experience over the last 20 years has always been that, well, first of all, the prices and the service are off the charts. And I always felt like they actually, the people really had investigated the parts. I think when Matt at the time, this is a few years ago, had sent me a, Dean, did they still refer to is it still referred to as a DC cassette? What is the thing that sits on top of the engine?
You're talking about a DI cassette, direct ignition
DI
cassette?
cassette. Thank you. Yeah, at the time, I called Euro, and I think I talked to Matt at the time because people were buying the DI cassettes for other, like, I guess they were buying from China, basically. And they were lasting for about a year. So what I've enjoyed about Euro is kind of the research that you do, and also the quality of parts, because you can get a lot of, junky stuff inexpensively. So the first thing I guess I want to ask you as I welcome you, and it's great having you here, is what would you say about the research that you do in terms of, for Saab, in terms of quality? Like, how do you come to the parts you put, that you select, and then how do you determine the stuff that you find? And I know you've been actively involved with that. So what would you say about product research? And also, your passion has come through about Saab. Our first conversation, I was really inspired about you and your commitment to Saab. So it's great having you here.
Well, as far as, how do we test out product, that kind of changes depending on when we're talking about and what parts we're talking about. Because in some cases, of course, if we don't have a test bed to get experience ourselves, we really rely on our customer base to go through, and you'd be surprised. For instance, you were talking about DI cassettes. Back in the day,
yes,
when there wasn't any option and the genuine ones were expensive, Pro Parts went through and made one, and frankly, we weren't thrilled about selling it at first because we ran through a batch of 20 of them. And I think Chris probably remembers these days, I'm sure Jack does as well, where, believe it or not, 18 of the original 20 failed. They had an abysmal failure rate. And truth be told, the genuine ones are still a better product, and they should be for their cost. But there are many parts that Pro Parts has made over the years that have been great, and there have been a few parts where work's been needed to make them better. And the genuine ones have actually finally come down to the price point now where, for the most part, I do recommend buying the genuine one at this point if you can spare the few extra bucks, because I think it's worth the extra quality. But that said, in a lot of cases, classic 900 heater water valves, for instance, we went through some issues with those. We've been fortunate enough to have great relationships with companies like Pro Parts where they actually listen when we have customer feedback. There was an engineer who went through the litany of issues with the first generation of the heater water valve that they produced, and they actually listened. They went through the mechanical drawings that he provided. They made improvements. At this point, they're the only game in town on that heater water valve. Nobody's making it but them at this point. So as much as we would love to go back in time and be able to pay for original equipment products and get that quality every time, sometimes you just have to work with what's available. And if you have a company that at least is willing to listen to customer complaints, that's one of the best ways we have of figuring out what brands of products and what carriers that we should be dealing with, because obviously if they listen to customer complaints and then do something about it, that's pretty valuable. It's also pretty easy when you're working with companies that have been either the original equipment supplier. So very often when you go to the site, we're offering a genuine product, an original equipment product, and an aftermarket choice, and typically in 3 different price levels that make it pretty clear, depending on your budget, what product you're going to end up with at the end of the day. And of course, I always recommend buying the best product that you can afford at that point. And most people understand. And there are certain jobs where you want to spend the extra money and get the best quality product available. And like a classic 900 heater water valve is probably a great example. There's a lot of man time involved in replacing one of those. So to skimp out for 30 or 40 bucks is kind of crazy. If you skip out, if you can save yourself 100% cost or 80% of the cost of a genuine product, sometimes that's tempting, especially when you're doing the work yourself and you're not paying, by the hour. You're paying a tech to do the work. You definitely want to buy the best part available so that he can do the best job for you. And let's face it, if you're paying for labor, you don't want to pay twice. That's for sure.
In terms of feedback, and I realize people are probably going to have questions for you, which is great. So I encourage you guys, if you have questions or you're in the middle of thinking about getting a part, because I realize that part of it's also fun. I also enjoy hearing about certain parts, and because some people have they'll tell me as an example, these brakes are night and day different. So it was fun to go to EO and talk to you about it because I was curious what your feedback was. So what's your first, I don't know, do you have a guideline, like when people call you, particularly about Saabs, is there a certain basis that you want to, or a certain philosophical base you want to convey to them you think is, especially new Saab drivers, because I see this from younger people, really getting into Saabs now. And what was said to me early on, Dean, was that the worst thing that could happen to a Saab is that it's treated by a non-Saab specialist, and it goes to some of the junky, I don't know, quick oil places. And Walter Wong got into this, that it's just a real bummer because these cars, I think it reflects in the longevity that they use, that they've fixed up with cheap parts, basically.
Well, especially oil. Good oil isn't terribly expensive, and unfortunately, slightly less than adequate quality oil is, can cost you thousands, especially in Saab engines and anything turbocharged. So, we definitely want to make sure people are getting the proper specification oil for their cars and a good quality filter. It's always, I think those things are pretty easy. I mean, the great news for most Saab parts is that there's not always a degree of really cheap aftermarket available because the market's not big enough for some of those companies to really get involved in. So we've been pretty fortunate in that regard. And as far as new Saab customers go,
Yes.
I always find it surprising that even customers who are new to Saab really aren't new to Saab. Typically, if you talk to a 24, 26-year-old person who's buying their first Saab and they're buying a good quality used Saab, it's usually because the family's owned them before. And it's not that many new first-time Saab owners. There are some, definitely.
Yes.
And the brand definitely attracts some people who are surprised when they first get into them if they've been driving other European marques at how different a Saab can be, especially people who are driving larger displacement cars that were heavier and get into a 2-liter or a 2.3 turbo car that's properly tuned and in a good state of repair. I think a lot of those people are definitely surprised. But I do talk to a lot of people who are generational, generational rehashes for Saab ownership. Their dad owned one, their uncle owned one, their mom drove one. It's almost always a kind of a family love affair that's being extended by yet another generation.
Oh, that's so cool to hear.
Do you guys find that as well, Chris?
Yes, I think that is the case. I mean, I've had people that have been away from Saab for a few years, and they come to me asking me if I know of any because they want to get another one. So it's pretty interesting.
What have they usually gone to, Chris?
Well, it varies. I mean, some people are looking for the older ones, the classic 900s, and some people, they've had a 9.5, and then they've got a lot of miles, it got rusty or whatever, and they went to a Honda or something like that, or and all of a sudden they're like, I really want to get another Saab, and if you hear of any that are in good shape, let me know. So.
What do you think drives them out of whatever Honda Accord, Toyota Camry, whatever soulless?
I think it's the
whatever soulless empty machine they were driving.
Right. I think it's kind of like the the Hondas and Toyotas are real dependable and everything, but it's like driving an appliance,
Guilty as charged, by the way. Full disclosure: my daily commuter turned into a Honda Accord Coupe 4-cylinder.
Yeah.
When I was doing about 500 miles a day every week, I guilty as charged. It's like driving a toaster. But It does everything well. It's hard to hate it as a car, but you don't feel any. There's no visceral connection. There's nothing.
Right. Yeah.
So, as dealing with the Saab population online every day, I've been encouraged over the last year and a half at seeing how many younger Saabers are coming into the community. And the comment I hear the most often is that while I imagine many of them come through a family history of owning Saabs, but I hear a lot of young people just say, "Wow, look at that car. What is it?" Unique. I like to describe it as a aggressive forward stance. A forward stance. It's a beautiful, aggressive forward stance looking car, and even the sedans don't look like any other sedans on the market, and the classic 900 is such an eye catcher. So that's just what I happen to see as I'm going all over the internet and interfacing with Saab people. I have people contacting me all the time, just asking general questions about Saab stuff and stuff like that.
Can I jump in?
Please, Jack.
David.
Oh, David, go ahead. Yes. Welcome, David.
Thank you. This first time here. I have two 900s turbos, and one 900 parts car. They're 89, 85, and the parts car is a 92. And it's all turbo. One's automatic. The parts car is automatic. Well, my problem is replacing the master cylinder on the 85 with a non-ABS, and I've gotten the cast master cylinder. I have problems with the reservoir and the grommets, and the reservoir in the old one I can use that. Except I'm looking for.
It's a good thing because those have been discontinued. So.
Yeah, I called Europarts on Friday, and it wasn't working, or maybe it was Thursday. No, I'm friendly with a guy named Jerry at Mile High Saab in Denver.
Good guy.
Oh yeah, good guy. Yeah.
And they have a huge yard of 900s. So I imagine you try and fish out the right size grommets out of a used master cylinder.
Yeah, that's going to be tough. And you're talking about the grommets at the top of the master underneath the reservoir, right?
Yes, and they have to be kind of tight so you don't have to bleed the brakes all the time. Is that correct?
Well, if you don't want them leaking between the reservoir and the top of the master cylinder, you are correct.
Leaking air.
Both air and
Both.
fluid.
both
Right.
both leaking, letting air in and letting fluid out. Yes.
Yeah. What do you suggest I do?
Now the brake master cylinder didn't come with those new.
Yes, they did.
Okay, because a TRW cylinder should come with new ones, I believe. I'm working from memory here, so forgive me, but I'm pretty sure they come with them.
I didn't get them from you. I bought them from the new company in New Jersey with a small I at the end. I don't know what.
Do you know what brand of master they're selling?
I think it's a TRW.
Okay.
To it, but I knew the reservoir didn't look the same, and it didn't have an outlet for the clutch master. So I knew I was going to have to replace the reservoir.
Okay, so the last time I took one of those out of a box, it was actually a TRW box, but it was a Lucas Girling unit in the box, and I would have to do a little research for you to find out if the grommets are available as a new part. I don't believe that Saab has offered those for quite some time, but I could certainly look into that for you.
Right. I'm sure it's a Lucas Girling. I'm almost positive.
But you need the reservoir grommets because you've got everything but the reservoir grommets at this point.
That's correct. I tried ordering grommets, the ones that they offered, they ended up being for a Mercedes, and that doesn't work.
Right. So it's a 1985 900 turbo.
Yes.
Okay. And we probably have your account on file. I can definitely log in and find out if you need me to. But you've done business with us before?
Once or twice. I think I'm registered, but okay. I can go back up online and register.
I'm taking notes anyway. So if you at some point want to flip me your number, you can always email me directly at dean@eeuroparts.com. Real easy. Just email me directly at dean@eeuroparts.com. And you can also call my 800 number any weekday from 9 to, typically it's 9 to 5, but frankly, I'm there usually longer. And I'm extension 303 at the 800 number. Anytime you have a classic 900 part or an old 9000 part that you're not seeing on the site, that doesn't mean it doesn't exist anywhere on the planet. In some cases, things have been removed from the site because suppliers have run out, price sheets get updated, things happen. Just because it's not listed on the site doesn't mean we can't help you with it, but it does mean you need to contact us and let me know what you need. There's also a way on the site you can do that. If you go to the blue banner at the top of any page where it says contact Euro Parts in the dropdown, there's a an email field there where you can fill out in about 30 seconds with your car, the year and model, and it automatically sends our customer service team an email letting you know that, hey, I couldn't find this part on your site. please help me. And somebody will usually get back to you within, depending on what time of week it is, somewhere between 4 and 10 hours, depending on how busy they are. But somebody will get back to you with a link to the site. In some cases, they'll actually build the product and get it put on the site for you. So there won't be a photo there or listings, but there'll be a link where you can purchase it. Or they'll let you know, hey, these aren't available, and they might give you some suggestions as to where you might look to find a proper used one. But obviously, those two grommets need to be new. You're not going to fish around for used ones for that.
Right.
Chris might actually have
it's possible.
Chris might have some info on that front because he works on an awful lot of classic 900s. Chris, any memory of working with those?
Yeah, well, the problem is the 85 still has a cast iron master cylinder, and then after that they went to a steel one. Worst case scenario, if you take the brake booster with a steel master cylinder, you can actually put that on the 85.
So you upgrade to the 86 and up.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the last one.
And there's no pedal issues there. It's all the same from the back.
Yeah. Yeah. So other than that, I don't know exactly where you would get. I don't see too many of that vintage with a bad master cylinder anymore. So I haven't had to find the grommets. The last one I had where I did have a cast iron master cylinder did come with the grommets. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But I can certainly look into that for you, David.
Right. They don't make any rebuild kits anymore?
Unfortunately, the last of the rebuild kits were not ATE units or Lucas units. And frankly, we've run into some problems with the quality of the internal cup not making a good seal to the inner bore. So I'm not really happy with selling what's left in the marketplace. Chris, any suggestions from Jack or Chris on rebuild kits for those? Have you run into the same problem I have where the cup diameters are not quite correct for the inside and they leak they bypass internally?
I haven't rebuilt one of those in years. I mean, most of the time they're so pitted inside you can't really do much with them.
Yeah, that was more what I was thinking, as I'm curious about the quality of the rebuild, having more to do with the bore finish and stuff like that rather than the cups themselves,
Definitely a possibility. Are you familiar with White Post Restorations, David?
No, I'm not.
It's a company that does brake rebuilds for basically anything with brakes, and it doesn't matter how old it is, doesn't matter how rare it is. If push came to shove, they actually do bronze sleeving of master cylinders. Even if you had a 23 Rupp Truckster, it doesn't matter what you own. If they can't buy it, they'll make it. And they do some fabulous brake work. White Post Restorations is the name of the business. You might want to give them a try. As far as rebuilding goes, they also have they've been doing it forever, and they have a litany of parts, and they also have suppliers who will make things for them. Or very often, bear in mind a lot of these things, like Lucas only made so many internal piston cups, and just because there's no listing for it in the Saab parts book doesn't mean that Lucas didn't make it and they're sitting on a shelf somewhere in a plastic bag and they happen to fit some other car from the same period. And just because we don't list it again, sometimes it just takes digging and research to find it.
Yeah, that White Post Restorations can also be found online at whitepost.com.
Yeah, really good outfit. If anybody who's working on older cars, they do tremendous work.
I'm just going to jump in for the other people. Some new people have come online, and I just want to mention that you have the ability to unmute yourself after David is done. We're going to have Rick Foster ask a question, but then you can unmute yourself. People who are on a phone can use *6 to unmute themselves and participate, or *9 to raise your hand, and I can call on you. Same thing with the Zoom software. You can click on participants and click raise hand, and I'll call on you, or go ahead and post in chat that you have a question to me or to everyone, and I'll make sure you get called on. Thanks.
In conclusion to your question, David. In conclusion to your question, David, if you go ahead and email me your information so you don't have to announce your phone number, that'd be great.
Okay. My scenario would be to call Jerry in Denver and have him send me a used master cylinder, and then see if that works, and then you know, and go from there. And at least maybe I can try fishing out the grommets. I don't know, you know, and it might work. But I don't want to.
One word to the wise: when you get this brake job finally finished and everything's, you know, ready to go again, 3 years. Every 3 years you got to flush it. New fluid every 3 years. That'll save that work.
Well, this last one's been sitting there for 3 years, and that's why I'm stuck with it.
Well, probably before that, it sat with the same fluid in it longer. That's what pits the inside of those systems and tears up rubber and does bad things. Brake fluid's hydroscopic. It collects water. You got to get rid of it every 3 years or so.
Got it. Okay.
I want to welcome. Thank you, David. I want to welcome all you guys to the Saab and Driving Show, and I'm Glenn Brooks, and I've been so passionate about this, and I'm so happy you're here today, and it's an honor getting Dean with us. We have Jack and Chris, and so with your questions, and I wanted to give you a model question or something I think that you guys will find interesting. A recent discussion I had, and why I'm getting certain breaks. I want to open it up, and we got someone coming on next. Was it Rick?
Yeah, Rick Foster. You want to go ahead?
Go ahead, Rick.
Yeah,
welcome.
Hi. Good morning from
Good
Salem,
morning.
Oregon.
Salem.
I was going to go ahead and ask about another thing on my car that's been bugging me, but this morning I went out to turn it on and get some numbers off the Tech 2, and it wouldn't start. So it's a crankshaft position sensor. I just replaced it with a Bosch one about 2 weeks ago, and it ran fine when I parked it last night, but when I started it this morning, it won't start. And I hooked up the Tech 2 and got like 400 or 500 knocks and misfires on it, and I haven't yet gone and back and tested the input to the ECM, but geez, would it just go from working fine to getting crazy this morning?
I find it very unlikely that your Bosch crank sensor failed in a week.
Yeah.
It's possible, but it's more likely that your fuel pump failed. So when I had cars come in that were no starts, the first thing I would do is slide under the back of the car with a hammer, and while somebody cranked the car over, I would whack the bottom of the tank with a hammer, the side of a hammer. You don't want to go with the point of it, right? Or a brick or something. You just want to make the pump move. And if the car starts immediately, you know you have a bad fuel pump. You can usually get several starts out of one of those cars that way. It worked like every time for me. So if it didn't start and the car was hot, if it came in hot, so typically crankshaft position sensor problems, like the car would warm up and then it wouldn't start, and then when it got cold it would start, right? So if a car came in hot and it was a no start, I would soak the crank sensor down with brake cleaner, which would chill it, and the car would start immediately. And then the third thing is, if neither of those cause the car to start, you can lift the DI cassette up just a little bit, like unbolt it and lift it up a little bit, and you can usually hear the spark arcing to the spark plugs, right? If you do that, the spark would be jumping from the DI cassette to the tips of the spark plugs. And if you hear nothing, it's probably a bad DI cassette. But my bet would be on your car that your fuel pump just stopped working.
Okay. I've never replaced it, and it now has 160. I picked it up at 80,000.
So yeah, and if it was getting flaky, it might be some of the reason for your knocking and stuff too, right? If your fuel pressure is starting to drop off and all that, it could be running a little lean and picking up some lean misfires and knocking and things like that. So I would whack if you have a partner or somebody there that can help you, get them to crank the car over, slide under the back of it with a rock or a brick or something, and smack the tank a few times, and it should start right up. And if it does, replace the fuel pump.
Yeah, I ran the Tech 2, and there was like a dozen knocks on it and misfires a week ago. So, all right, thanks so much. I'm going to try those.
Okay, we have Michael Steinberg up next. I'll just see if I can't get him unmuted. Go ahead, Michael.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, thanks for taking my call. I appreciate it.
Good
It's
day.
my first time being in the forum. I've been here for a little bit and listening to everybody, and it sounds really awesome. I have a Saab 2003 9.5. Picked it up a couple of years ago. The outside of the vehicle is in absolutely pristine condition. I had a couple of problems with it. For the most part, it works great. But I had an independent Saab guy look at it because there was a noise that was coming from the bottom of the vehicle. And it turns out after he reviewed, he found that the balance shaft chain tensioner was separated. So I had no option except to have the vehicle removed and I'm sorry, the engine removed, and I had to have that rebuilt with a new balance shaft tensioner, and I ended up having the timing chain replaced and everything else, and that was all fine and good. Before the engine was removed, there was an issue that I was hoping would be resolved as a result of having that replaced. I had the independent dealer look at it and acknowledge that there was a problem when the transmission was engaged. The engine would vibrate, and this is probably something that I'm sure that's a lot of other people have experienced, but I can't make it, heads or tails of it. And apparently after they had installed the engine and I had all of the engine mounts replaced, I still have this persistent issue with, and this is an automatic, of the entire vehicle vibrating in drive. I know that there's some alternative processes that could be done, such as raising the RPM, which is something I really don't want to do with the Tech 2. I've had the subframe bushings replaced as well, and some other things looked at, but I still have this persistent issue, and I was just hoping that somebody could maybe perhaps point me in another direction as to how to remove this vibration that's just absolutely nagging.
I was really hoping you hadn't had the subframe bushings done yet, because that obviously would be your next place to look. But
I did.
We'll leave this one. We'll leave this one to a qualified tech.
Does it do it in reverse?
Yes.
Oh, it does it both ways. Okay.
Neutral, it seems to be okay. It's definitely, there's some noticeable vibration, but it's not nearly as bad as when it's engaged in drive or reverse.
And how many miles did you say were on it?
I didn't actually. It's got 150 now.
Okay.
Is it an original exhaust system on the car?
Yes.
Okay. So sometimes harmonics can come up in exhaust systems that will transmit droning noises or vibration to the car. And I don't know if you've looked at all of your exhaust hangers and made sure that they're in really good condition and the exhaust is not touching the car anywhere. But that's one thing to look at. Another way that vibration can be transmitted directly to the car and get around things like mounts and bushings is through axles. Naturally there's no rubber in an axle, so when you throw a car in gear, an automatic, right, the converter loads the axles slightly and some vibration is transmitted to the car. So like if you slightly step on the throttle and just get the RPM up like 100 RPM or something like that, does it like straighten right out? Or
yes.
Yeah. So what is the problem with connecting the Tech 2 and getting the RPM up a little bit?
Is that the right way to approach a situation when you have vibration, is to raise the RPM? That would be my concern.
But like, what's the problem with that? Like, I'm sorry to keep throwing this back at you, but like,
yeah,
if there's a very simple solution to a problem, and you feel like your car is in good health, like I would definitely go over the exhaust system and look at the exhaust hangers and all that kind of stuff. You can even clamp some weights onto the exhaust system as an experiment, to see if the exhaust is setting up a harmonic, you know, maybe it's the exhaust is aged and the tubing is thinned in some places, and this is allowing it to set up a harmonic at that certain RPM. So you could, you know, strap weights onto it here and there and see if the vibration goes away, and get to the root of the problem that way, certainly. And I'm all for fixing, you know, the root cause of problems, especially if they're, you know, something that's going to cause more trouble with the car or whatever.
Sure.
But the reason in this particular instance why I keep pushing this thing of like, why not just raise the RPM a little bit if that solves the problem, is because in this case, the vibration is something that's annoying to you, right? It's something that makes the car less pleasurable when you're sitting in it and the steering wheel shaking, right? So raising the RPM 100 RPM, there's no drawback to that, right? It doesn't like make the transmission really hot or create any other problems, but it gets rid of the issue, right? It gets rid of the vibration.
It definitely subdues that, you know, noticeable problem I have, you know, at the idle speed currently. So, I mean, I could do it. I just had some concerns about there being drawbacks, and you're telling me that there aren't any. So I could definitely try that, and you know, the other approaches that you'd mentioned. So I do appreciate it.
Yeah, I would look into the exhaust system. Just make sure that all the hangers are in really good shape. And sometimes weird things will happen, like somebody will back into something with like the tip, like get the tip jammed on a parking curb or something like that, and bend the exhaust slightly and weaken an area of the exhaust that can like set up some of these harmonics or cause the exhaust to become in contact with the body of the car somewhere and transmit vibration directly to the body of the car. You know? So I would really look at the exhaust system quite a bit, you know. Definitely when you have like, if a balance shaft chain, you know, if the balance shafts become out of time or something like that, certainly, or not there, right? You have some more vibration, like from a performance standpoint, some people would, and I did this on one engine and never did it again, remove the balance shaft chains from the engine because to reduce rotating mass, to get it acts like a lightened flywheel when you remove this chain. The drawback is that the engine's not, I hate to say this because I love Saab engines quite a bit and I think they're very durable, but when they started putting balance shafts in them, they were worried less about balancing the rotating assemblies because they could mask imbalance with balance shafts, right? So the engines ended up not being very well balanced, where if you look at like a B202, right, in like a classic 900, the engine's very well balanced and doesn't shake hard higher in the RPM. But in this B204 that I pulled the balance shaft chain off of, it felt like it was turning 5,000 RPM at like 3,000 RPM, you know, like it just felt like it was revving a lot more. So in the case of your car, if it's very smooth off idle, like basically with a 4-cylinder engine, you have like, you know, 4 pulses per revolution or whatever, right? So you have fewer pulses at idle. So naturally, even with balance shafts, the engine is going to shake because of the number of pulses per revolution, right? And so, you know, you need really soft mounts and you need to isolate this vibration from the body of the car so that the driver can be comfortable and not experience this vibration. But it's something that you have to put up with a little bit, right? It is a 4-cylinder and you have to keep that in mind. A 6-cylinder is going to be smoother, an 8-cylinder smoother still, 12 cylinders or even smoother. You know, if you listen to a 12-cylinder crank over, it sounds like it has no compression because the compression is constantly present as the starter rolls the engine through all the compression strokes, right? You don't get like a as it cranks over. It's like a wee, you know, because there's so many compression strokes per revolution, you know, and it's the same with the vibration when the engine's running, right? They're just much smoother because you have a higher number of pulses per revolution. Anyway, there's some theory for you.
Thanks, Jack.
We have,
Thanks, David.
We have a question from Doug. Doug, you want to go ahead?
Hi, yes.
Hey, Doug.
My name's Doug. I live up in the Pacific Northwest. So a couple quick questions kind of related to moisture. So the first is I was working on my brakes maybe about a year ago. I drained all the fluid, and then it's just sort of been sitting there, and now I'm ready to get back to it. Would you think it'd be pretty safe just to put in fluid and then and then get the air out, or would there be any concern of things seizing inside, and maybe I should do something preventative before I put it back together?
There's probably only one thing worse than old brake fluid in a brake system, and that's no brake fluid in a brake system.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Yeah.
How long has it been sitting with no brake fluid in it?
Maybe 6 months.
That's a long time in the world of corrosion.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't leave a brake system open with air in it like that for a long period of time.
Yeah. So would it be mainly the calipers, just making sure they're not seized, or before I?
It's not seizing so much that's an issue. It's like when, the oxidization that builds up in like the master cylinder and the calipers probably are less of an issue, but I would say more so the brake master cylinder. When air is present and no fluid there, the oxidization can occur, in the metal, basically, whether it's aluminum or steel or cast iron or whatever the metal is that's there. When air is there and some moisture in that air, the oxidization can occur, on the surface of the metal in the bores, right? So you put fluid in, and the cups have not been moving there to like clean this oxidization off. So oxidization is a normal occurrence, in like Dean was saying, this hygroscopic property of brake fluid to bring in moisture. There will always be some oxidization present in the system, and the cups moving and the seals and the calipers, moving back and forth kind of polishes the working area of the bore, right? So this is part of the reason why when you're bleeding a brake system, you don't want to stomp the pedal all the way to the floor, because you're pushing the cups into an area that they don't normally travel in the brake master cylinder, right? That you just want to pump them only very slightly so that you're keeping the cups in that polished area, particularly on an older car.
Yeah.
Doug, do you have access to a pressure bleeder?
There you go.
No.
You should get access to a pressure bleeder and fill the system with fluid, open all the valves, get a pressure bleeder on it so that you can just push clean fluid through as a flushing solvent.
Okay.
And then close the system back up and bleed it. And unfortunately, I would recommend after you get it filled with clean fluid and you operate it for, it's going to sound ridiculous, but a day, if that. Yeah. I don't even think I'd street operate it. I'd just driveway operate it. And then open bleeders again and push that fluid out again and see what it looks like when you're pushing it out. If you push it out and it looks like somebody emptied a baby's diaper into the container, you may be out of luck and you may have to do some rebuilding of calipers and a master cylinder and such. If you push it out and it's really clean, or it's got very small particulate and it looks like just maybe some small particulate of rubber and rust, flush it again and then see what happens. If it turns out that you didn't have a lot of corrosion, then you're going to be okay. But if it turns out you had a lot, that new brake fluid is going to act as a solvent, and you doing the action of the braking is going to work that corrosion off the walls. But again, 6 months is a long time to be open with no fluid. So I'd be prepared to see some corrosion there.
Yeah, thanks. And then the second question is, so I was getting some water ingress into the car. At first I thought it was the shark fin because it was all dried out. And then I replaced it with a little whip antenna, and then it was still doing it. So then it ended up being the sunroof channels. There's a plug at the end, but it doesn't actually seal. So I siliconed that, and that seemed to solve the problem. But then the other issue that arose is that when sometimes the turn signals don't, they just turn on. They don't pulse, and then there's no sound from the SID. So I heard that it could be the I think it's called the dice. So could it be just corrosion on the contacts and I take it off and put some electronics cleaner, or has anyone had some experience with that?
I mean, it could be the dice itself. Do you get sound from the radio and everything?
Yeah, well, yeah. So when it happens, right, I would click the turn signal. Let's say I was turning left. The light, the indicator on the dash would come on, but then it would stay lit. It wouldn't
Wouldn't
pulse,
flash, right?
and
Yeah.
there's no sound from the SID, because I think the flasher sound comes from the SID.
Right, but you do get like the key sound from the SID. What I'm asking is, do you get noise from the SID at all?
I don't think so. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
When it's
all right,
happening, I don't think there's anything.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you could always try cleaning the connectors. It doesn't hurt. It's not that hard. You know, but it could be the dice, because that's what controls the signals, is the dice. And then that generates a noise that comes out of the SID, and that's what makes your tick 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 noise. But it also makes a noise for like when you have the key in the ignition and stuff like that.
Oh, okay. All right. Thanks, guys.
Any common ground point issues when you have leaks like that? And where was your water collecting?
The water was collecting in the back, because once I got the headliner down, I could see that it would drip onto the seats, and then that's when I keyed into the those plugs at the end of the channels, after changing the antenna out, of course. So it was in the trunk and the on the rear seats. That's
Okay.
to be the most damp.
I don't know of any ground points in the SID circuit that are anywhere near there, so I don't think that's a problem. I don't think that's part of your problem.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that was just because maybe it was damp all inside the car, but I don't know. We'll see.
Do the lights light on the outside of the car and not flash?
Yeah.
They do light. Okay.
That sounds like SID to me. How about the rest of you?
Okay, I'm going to take a moment here. I wanted to introduce the next question. Seth Bengelsdorf is here with us. I just also wanted to mention that he's the editor of Nines Magazine. Which, if you're not getting Nines, you're missing out on a lot of really great Saab content. Nines is the magazine of the Saab Club of North America, and the Saab Club of North America is also a very long time sponsor of the Saab network, making it possible for that website to have been online all these years. Seth, go ahead. Do you have a question?
Yes, I do. Thank you for that intro, Scott. Not deserved, but I appreciate it. Anybody not getting Nines, it's saabclub.com to go to the Saab Club of North America and sign up there. Question I have is on a 2008 9.3 convertible. It's an electrical issue. I've had it since I've owned the car for about 2 years now. The driver's side control for the two outside rearview mirrors doesn't work mostly. I've had 3 different controllers that I've gotten from Jerry Danner. I know we mentioned Jerry Danner earlier, great guy. So I don't think it's the controller. What often happens is it does not control the proper mirror. You hit the control for the left side, and the right side will move. You hit the control for the left side up, the right side will move down. Not all 4 quadrants move on all the mirrors, and it's not a big deal. But my wife and I share the car, and she is vertically challenged. So she'll change the mirror or want to change the mirror, and we're not really able to. Is that a driver's door module issue or something else? Anybody have an idea on that one?
Does it have memory on the mirrors?
No,
it doesn't.
it's not convertible. Doesn't even have heated seats, but I'm in Austin, Texas, so that's not that big a deal.
What's that? I couldn't hear you.
I'm sorry. I said it's the base model, so it doesn't even have heated seats, which
okay, it doesn't have, so it doesn't have memory or anything.
Doesn't have any of those
yeah,
things.
I mean, it could be the door module. That could cause a problem, because it does go through the door module.
I have, when I first bought the car, it had been sitting outside. I'd seen it at the place where I bought it from for weeks and weeks and weeks, and it was very rainy. So the car spent, it's stored indoors now. So I thought maybe if everything dried out eventually, like my Sonnet, the electrical problems would disappear, because that car seemed to feel itself a lot. And so sometimes the doors wouldn't lock and unlock, but they seem to be doing that every time now. and
Okay.
the windows haven't been an issue. But I've sprayed the connector at the door. I've taken that guy off and sprayed it with the proper stuff a couple of times. Yeah, the mirrors have worked like twice since I've had the car, and then they don't.
Yeah. I mean, the door module, everything goes through the door module, door locks, the switch that's telling it whether the door's ajar and stuff like that. Everything goes through that, that window switch module. So it's possible that that's it, but it's hard to say.
Yeah, it's not it hasn't been something that I've been really itching to fix, but it's annoying. Every now and then, the driver's side mirror needs to come up a little, and I'm like, I'd like to just be able to hit the button like God intended me to. But,
yeah.
So,
I mean, the biggest problem I've had with those is the switches get corroded, but if you've had like 2 or 3 switches and they all do the same thing, I'd say that isn't it. Yeah.
The windows work great. I think the last time it worked was probably a year and a half ago, where I disconnected the battery for a day or two just to see if that would clear the electrics, and I think it worked for one try, and then back to insanity.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you can get a hold of a door module, I would try that. You could you don't even probably have to, marry it to the car. You could probably just plug it in and then see if it works.
Does it have to be married to the? That's my second question. Do I need to have somebody marry it to the car, because that's not something I have, or is it just a plug and play kind of thing? Module works or doesn't work?
Well, I mean, sometimes it'll work if you don't. I mean, it'll always come up with a code saying that it's not added, but sometimes they work just fine and sometimes they don't. Sometimes I put them in and like the driver's side will work, but then the passenger side window won't work from the driver's side or something like that until you actually add it to the car, so the car knows that it's, part of it. But you could, normally with stuff like the mirrors or something, even if you just plugged one in from another car, it would work if it's going to work,
Does it have to be from I mean, this is my other question. My other car is a 2011 9.3, but it's a sports sedan. Excuse me, a sport combi. Does it have to be a convertible door module?
No, I mean, just to try it, it wouldn't have to be. You can even even if some of the cars have anti-pinch and the other one doesn't, just to try it, you can plug them in. It won't hurt anything, and it'll work. It might not work the way it's supposed to, but usually you can just try it real, just plug it in and try it and see if that does. If the mirrors work, then hey, you found your problem. Then you're going to have to get the right one, and then obviously marry it to the car or whatever.
All right.
Something that crossed my mind is that, so I never worked on those years of Saabs, just to be very clear on it. But I worked for an OE, and we have to do a lot of programming and coding of modules and all this stuff. And if a car came in that did stuff like that, like you'd push the button and the wrong mirror would move in the wrong direction and all that kind of stuff, I would suspect like a coding issue with the car. And either the module that drives the mirrors, or a bus issue, a communication issue, or a coding issue. Like, we actually put in a module pretty commonly that controls windows and lighting and stuff like that, and there's like a warranty extension on it. And if you put one in and don't code it to the car, it'll work backwards, because I think it's originally coded for like a right-hand drive car or something like that. So I wonder if, I don't know if Chris has I don't know what happens on those cars, particularly when you marry it to the car, if it codes it to that particular VIN and vehicle, like with the, pinch and anti-pinch and all that stuff. But I wonder if not just connecting a Tech 2 to it and trying to recode the module, if that might not just straighten it out,
That would probably be worth a try too. I mean, it wouldn't hurt.
Yeah, maybe next time I bring it in for some kind of a service, because I don't own a Tech 2. There's a couple of places not far from where I live here in Austin that could at least give that a shot. That's a good idea. I didn't think of that. Thank you for that.
Wonderful hearing from you, Seth.
Yeah, you too, Glenn.
Yeah, no, great hearing. I love the magazine. I think you've done something really wonderful. And I encourage everybody to check. How could people get a copy? Give out your website, Seth.
Well, the website is saabclub.com, and
Mm-hmm.
that gives you you click on the magazine or click on join. Either way, you can't get the magazine without joining the club. And it's not
Okay.
too long. This is $40 a year. So love to have each and every one of you on it. And obviously, if you've got information on your car, things that come up during the time that we're spending here, you've got a story to tell, I'd love to publish it in the magazine. So do think about that as well.
That's great. Thank you, Seth, very much. Great hearing from you.
Hey,
I want to ask.
Hang on a second, Glenn. I'm going to jump in. Just a resource for
Go ahead.
Seth is if on SaabNet there's it's called the Saab Buddy Registry, and people sign up. The registry, it's you can find it on the homepage or just type buddy.saabnet.com and I'll put it in the chat. And there's a number of things Saabers are willing to do when they sign up and then list themselves. One is if you're traveling across the U.S. or wherever and have trouble, you can look up local Saabers who are willing to help. You can also look up Saabers who are willing to look at local Saabs for sale. If you're not local, like I had a SaabNet friend look at a Colorado car for me, so and say it was okay, and I bought it, and it turned out to be a great Saab, and I flew out and drove it home.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is there are a whole bunch of Saabers listening there that own Tech 2s that are willing to share their Tech 2s and help you out. So check that out. It's buddy.saabnet.com.
Yep, I got that written down. Thank you, Scott.
Sure.
Thanks, Scott.
How long's that been going, Scott?
The Buddy Registry. It actually started out as one of the members on the site started a thread on the bulletin board. Post your contact information here, and it lived on the bulletin board for a long time. And then I took out all the data and put it into a database, and with a registration process so that people could sign themselves up, and it's more easily searchable and that kind of stuff. But many years.
It's been many years.
Yeah, I know.
How have I missed it?
I know. I announce it. I re-announce it every once in a while, but there's a lot of different. There's so many different areas on the site. I'm sure not everybody can keep track of everything.
I've got to pay better attention. Like for instance, Harley has a similar thing called the Harley Owner Group. It's called HOG, but it's one of those things like you don't even think you need it until you're sitting there broken down 150 miles from home on a Sunday afternoon, and you're sitting there a DI cassette short of getting home, and you'd be surprised how many guys have a spare DI and would be 30 miles from you and say, sure, I'll be right over. Yeah. So
that's great.
Idea.
I love the community part. All right, I want to ask. So I have a 9.5 right now, 2000. I'm bringing it to Chris on, who I highly recommend as a master Saab mechanic in beautiful Dorset, Vermont, and I do recommend you going to a Saab specialist. SaabNet is a wonderful list, and I've spoken to most of them. They're pretty wonderful. Just spoke to Shelley in Atlanta, who's wonderful. And by the way, I just want to put out a plug for SaabNet in terms of if you're looking for a Saab. I just heard back from the owner that I bought the car from. I had touched base with him. He got right back to me. He told me he's glad to hear from me. I bought my Saab a year ago, and the owner of the Saab, Jerry, he had bought a Tesla, but we ended up talking about the 2004. So my question of the day, and I want to ask Dean, I want to ask you this question. I kind of brought it before the show, but I want to bring it so everybody could hear. I'm passionate about the 9000 and maybe the 9000 Arrow. I'd love to get your comments, Jack, Chris, Dean, Scott, about the 9000 as kind of one of the most significant rollouts that Saab's ever made in terms of, I don't know, drive, elegance, kind of just quite an amazing car to this day, kind of a timeless gem. And I guess, Dean, I wouldn't mind for you to comment in terms of parts for the 9000. And then I'd love to have you guys just comment about performance. By today's standards, how would you, and I guess and obviously it's timeless, but I'd love to get your comments about the Saab 9000. They still come and go on SaabNet. And some of the people keep them in wonderful shape. I'd like to get comments, feedback, and Dean, any thoughts about parts for the 9000?
It's always a pleasure to talk to 9000 owners because they're particularly passionate about their cars. It's kind of like a group in the group, and especially probably Aero guys, maybe even more than the rest. When I first got into Saabs like 20 years ago, the 9000 was actually one of the cars that attracted me most because I was a big American sedan guy. and most Saabs are too small for me. But
Mm-hmm.
you know, you can have 4 6'3", 250-pound guys sit in a 9000, and all 4 of you are actually comfortable. And later on that day, you can have 2 of those same guys in the front and have a cargo load of stuff in the back. And it's pretty tough to get rid of or get used to that utilitarian hatch and then get away from it once you go to a normal car and figure out how many things you can't carry in a car of its size, because it's got pretty cavernous cargo capability for a car of its size, and they're also a ton of fun to drive. And they handle great. There isn't much a 9000 doesn't do really well, and it's a sharp car, so it's a tough platform to beat. The problem in New England, of course, is rust, and no matter how much you love a car, at some point you can't fill the hatch with money and decide you're going to dump it all into the car. But there are still 9000 guys who have 1 or 2 of them in the barn or in the garage, and they're waiting for the one they're driving to die before they pull their spare one out of the back, because there's just not a lot of cars to replace it. That said, luckily most of the mechanical parts that are prone to issue are, a lot of them are still available. Unfortunately, electronics-wise and trim-wise, some of those parts are getting particularly difficult to find. Things like lower bumper pieces, outside trim, any of the weak points in the outside components, that's getting tougher and tougher, but there's still a decent supply of used parts for some of them. Chris, what are you running into as far as working on them on a daily basis? Any real key, hen's teeth that you really can't find, and you got to have used ones sitting in a can somewhere?
Yeah, I mean, just some of the electrical stuff, switches and stuff like that. Yeah, I mean, there's some, like trim pieces, lights and stuff like that. I mean, you can still find used stuff, but a lot of the stuff new is hard to find. Like door handles, stuff like that. The door handles tend to break on them, especially the back doors. So you have to get like used stuff for that.
Problem is you don't see many parts cars floating around anymore, where you used to be able to go scour the want ads and grab a parts car that was all rusted at the rear shock mounts and pick up a parts car for $300 or $400 and just strip it. $2,000 worth of parts off it.
Yeah, they're still out there, but they're getting to be few and far between. So they're it's a pretty impressive car. I remember when they first came out, and people would drive them and they'd be surprised at how much power the little 2.3 liter engine had. The other thing is the V6s. There's not a lot of parts out there for the V6s.
Yeah, definitely not.
I owned a couple of them. I really liked them.
I'm considering finding a one that's in great shape and bringing it to Chris. And I mean, right now, a matter of fact, I want to mention this now because Walter Wong, a great advisor, contributor, our great friend, he's out of the country now, but I wanted to bring up this issue of brakes because a lot of times I mentioned earlier that people will default to a cheaper part or bring it to they'll go get a part or they'll do something and they won't check with a Saab mechanic like Jack or Chris or check with Dean. So Dean, I'm getting brake parts. I'm getting a full brake system that's sent to Chris, and I'm so psyched because I haven't had this kind of level of performance of brakes. Take a moment for people and just talk about the relevance of brakes, because one of the things that Walter used to say is that when it comes time to invest in a part, there's certain things you don't want to mess around with. You said it earlier too. Talk about brakes for the 9.5 or the 9.3. What do you think is relevant, and why you don't want to, you don't want to hold back when it comes to making an investment on brakes. I'm really excited. I know one of the things that Chris said about the 9.5 on my car is the what is it called? The brakes that were what is it, Chris? What is it? The back brakes are what?
We're actually going to do a little fun comparison on your car. We're going to...
Let's talk about it.
We actually found one of the holes in the very small amount of holes in the Brembo brake line. Brembo actually covers about 98% of modern European models. that are in service today. So their
Okay.
coverage is pretty hardy. But you have one of the very few holes in their coverage. The rear brake rotor on your car, for the cars with the larger vented brake package, you don't have standard brakes on your car, you have the larger brake package. And the rear rotors aren't available in Brembo. The pads are available, and the front rotors of the big brake choice are also available, but the rear rotors are not. So we're going to do a fun long-term investigation on your car. We're going to equip
What are you going to do and share with?
We're going to do the front brakes in Brembo.
Yeah.
And we're going to do a comparison on a good quality rear brake setup that we pushed. And I'm trying to pull up your sales order, actually. I had
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
I had this up ahead of time, but I've been investigating some of the people calling in to see if they were checking to see what parts were purchased. But give me a sec.
Take your time, Dean.
Obviously, we've been carrying Brembo brakes for quite some time, and we're in love with the product line, and apparently so are Saab people, because we get bi-quarterly deliveries of Brembo product, and it didn't take long for the last delivery to completely sell out of our Tennessee warehouse.
Oh, wow.
And we probably have more Brembo brakes in stock for Saab products than Brembo has when we get our bi-quarterly deliveries. So our warehouse has more product than theirs does. Say
something about why a person would want to go with a line like Brembo. Like, share the difference, because a lot of people.
Well, the fun part
I want to make sure that people learn.
It's the fun part about that is that Brembo offers an OE replacement product line. You don't necessarily have to get into full race program stuff to use Brembo products. They're actually OE on a lot of cars and motorcycles today, but Saabs have always had better quality brake products used on them when they were built than a lot of cars do. Companies like ATE, for instance, and those cars were equipped right from the factory with better than average brakes. So when you start looking at really cheap quality brake replacement products, it's kind of a disparagement to the car, where you're not even putting what the OE specification products were on the car. And of course, guys like Chris, who put brakes on all day, can attest to it, that if when he orders brake products for your car, that he's certainly looking for a product that's at least as good as the original equipment was, and in some cases even better. And that's usually what Brembo represents. If you look at the machining quality, the casting quality, the research that goes into their compositions. For instance, most brake companies have between 5 and 20 brake pad compositions. Brembo has over 100. They actually specifically design compositions for certain car product lines. So when you buy products, they're taking all the brake load considerations in when they're making a set of brake pads. And the brake pads you're getting are the street ceramic version pad that they offer. So it's not a race style ceramic, designed for super high autocross style temperatures that you're going to see on the track. It's a street ceramic pad that's designed for lower dust and for slightly higher temperature ranges than the straight semi-metallic pads that were used on the car originally. They also offer a metallic pad that's a great quality choice. And for a lot of people, the straight semi-metallic pads are a good choice because it's really tough to beat them in cold dead panic stops when you don't have time to preheat your brake system like race car drivers do. That's why most manufacturers use a semi-metallic pad on their base model street cars, or not just base models, but even some of the sport models still use a semi-metallic pad. And when your 5-year-old rides a bicycle in the street in front of you and you don't have time to preheat your brakes, sometimes the difference of 12 or 15 feet doesn't sound like a lot, but that can be the difference between tragedy and actually stopping the car. So most manufacturers, the semi-metallic brake pads are the way to go when you're on the street, but for a lot of our European customers, they don't want brake pads that dust up the front wheels every 2 days.
Yes.
And they're willing to take a small compromise. Well, Brembo's ceramic pads in most cases test either at or even slightly lower than some of the semi-metallic pads that are available, especially OE ones. So those compromises have kind of come and gone. They actually have a higher carbon content steel and rotors. One of the reasons to pick Brembo rotors is not only that, they have a UV coating, which is unlike most rotors where they're lacquer coated or they're powder coated. Some of those processes are fairly ecologically unsound. Most of them are solvent based, where Brembo rotors actually have a water-based coating system that's actually just as or more than specified for corrosion, where their coatings are so far less. They have a great article on their site. I would recommend everybody go to brembobrakes.com and read their article on brake coatings. Coating the unswept surfaces of rotors is kind of in vogue for the last 5 or 6 years.
I've been seeing that.
Yeah, because a lot of people have more open wheels where you can really see the brake product. So having brake products that don't corrode even in the unswept areas has always been a challenge, and most of the brake manufacturers have used a coating system to answer that call. But a lot of those coating systems, if you really look into it, are pretty seriously damaging environmentally. They're pretty caustic as far as when they have to apply them. But check out the Brembo site on what they're doing for coatings. It's really interesting. I would definitely recommend checking it out. But
well, that's great, Dean. I will.
But we're going to be doing a Brembo front ATE Bosch rear brake job on your car. So basically, we're going to do long-term comparison where you can report, especially after winter, about what the difference between the appearance of the brake products, not to mention their performance, but for a lot of people, you wouldn't necessarily notice the difference between one brand of rotor and one brand of pad to another in a brake test. There might be slight differences in feet. There might be slight differences in feel, but for many customers, that's really not it. For a lot of them, it's the appearance of the brake product because you can see them through the relatively open wheels they're equipping their car with. So they want brake products that don't 3, 4, 5 weeks later. Some of the less expensive brake products that don't have proper coatings, literally days after you install them, will have surface rust on them because they're open cast. So they're relatively prone to corrosion, and that minor amount of corrosion actually isn't a significant issue as far as the brake's operation. It's just a significant issue in how they look. So for a lot of customers, they just want a brake product that's going to maintain a quality look through their relatively open wheel. And I think that you're going to notice that's where you're going to notice the difference in your car when you look at the appearance of the brake product. I think you're also going to probably notice a big difference. We're kind of giving it the unfair advantage. The Brembo front brakes are going to be doing most of the brake work on your car because obviously that's where most of the action happens on brake systems on the front brakes. So as far as the longevity goes, we're giving the other brands a little bit of extra rope because they're only in charge of bringing the rear to a halt, not the front. So it's going to be interesting to see pad wear. I know you use your car pretty in a spirited fashion. So we're going to looking forward to see how the Brembo wear on the ceramic pads does against the Bosch pads. So
I'll be updating you guys. Thank you. Thank you for your care and getting together with Chris. I felt I was in great hands having you two come together, by the way.
And I'm looking forward to Chris's commentary. I'm not sure how much Brembo product he installs, but
Chris,
I'm looking forward to his commentary after he gets a good look.
So it's 3:20. I'm going to go ahead and we just put out these two questions for everybody to think about. I'm going to have Rick come back on with a final question. So the two questions, I'm also going to I'll post these two questions to the Saab Network General Bulletin Board. If they don't get answered here, you can come to the General Bulletin Board and someone may answer them there. But for people to think about while Rick is asking his question, and you can chime in afterwards. Thomas is asking if anyone knows of anybody making new Sonnet windshields or maybe a source for Sonnet windshields. And then the other question is from David Springer. He's owned V4s for many years and is looking at classic 900s now and is wondering if there are any shops that can recondition high mileage engines in the Northern California area. So while you think about that, if anybody has a question, they can chime in after we get Rick's final question answered. And let me see if I can't get Rick.
Hi, thanks, Scott.
Just go ahead, Rick.
When I was changing that CPS, I noticed that there was a lot of fine metal filings and oil stuck onto the sensor. And so I went ahead and changed it, but wondered if that's indicative of a bigger problem, or is there some way to clean that out so it doesn't foul a new one?
What was that for again? I didn't hear it.
It was the crankshaft position sensor when I pulled.
Oh, crankshaft position sensor.
Yeah. Year and model car though?
Oh, I'm sorry. It's a 9.5, 2002 9.5 ARC 6-cylinder.
So I have one question for you. So it's a 6-cylinder car that we're talking about here.
Right.
But I'm sorry?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. So one thing that I would say to anybody with the Saab and including V6 ones, but particularly on 4-cylinder ones, as a technician, a lot of these cars basically just needed the oil pan to be removed, cleaned out, and resealed, and put back on to remove sludging from inside the pan. Like a lot of metal filings and things like that stuck to the crankshaft position sensors, not a really good sign. But frequent oil changes and removing the oil pan and cleaning sludging out, from inside there at least once, when you acquire the car, because that sludging was a common cause of catastrophic engine failure in the 4-cylinders. Like, they were very, very sturdy engines, right? Like, the iron was amazing. I could tell you stories about how I personally tortured these engines, like, doubling and tripling their horsepower and have them hold together. But, the fact of the matter is, if you don't give the engine oil, there's no way it can survive, and the sludging will get sucked up against the oil pickup screen and cause it to become blocked, and then there's welding in the engine and the bearings get torn up and all this stuff.
Yeah, I did that 40,000 miles ago, and I changed the oil about every 3,000 to 5,000 miles with good oil, Mobil 1.
Well, that sounds fine. And if you saw some material on there, I mean, aside from doing that, there's not really anything else. But that was your question, right? If you see filings on it when you pull it out, what do you do to keep those filings from reoccurring? And that's about it,
All right, great, thanks.
All right, we're going to have a final question from John. John, you want to go ahead?
Yeah, thank you, Scott, for hosting this. First of all, it's the first one I've attended, and I've learned a lot. I actually was buying some parts from Dean yesterday. Tried to buy more parts than Dean could sell me, but found Dean very, very helpful. I really enjoyed the chance to converse with him. My question today, yeah, you're welcome. Yeah, my question today is regarding the Tech 2 tool. I bought one from a Chinese vendor a few years ago, and I erred in that I think I plugged it into the cigarette lighter as well as plugged it into the car, and it hasn't worked since. And I hesitate to send it back to China for repair. So I'm just wondering if anybody can tell me, can I pull that apart? And is there maybe a fuse in there? Because I think I tried to dual power it and probably caused a problem. So, maybe you can help me, maybe not, but it's worth a shot.
That I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know that either.
Yeah, I don't think it's really a problem to plug it into the cigarette lighter and the OBD2 port at the same time. I don't think that that's really a problem. But what I can tell you about so I have an original Tech 2 that I bought a long time ago. I bought it used a long time ago, and it was quite expensive, like as a used Tech 2 when I bought it. I bought it like probably in like 2003 or 2004 or somewhere around there. And I had parts of it fail down the road, like the display and maybe the main board or something like that, and it failed, and I've replaced those parts with Chinese parts, and it functions, but it doesn't work great. But the reason I say all that stuff is that you can buy all the parts and replace them, in there, but you can take it apart and investigate. I don't remember seeing any fuses internally on it, but it's been at least several years since I've had mine apart. But I don't remember there being any fuses in there. So yours just doesn't power up at all?
It won't connect to the car at all. It powers up, and I can go through different things on the Tech 2, but it will not connect to a car. And then it happened after I had it dual powered by the car powered it, and I had to plug this into the cigarette lighter. And I just assumed that's what happened.
I would suspect the connector, the plug, like oftentimes with original Tech 2s, the cable that went between the Tech 2 and the OBD connector, they would get funky, and you would have to like bend the cable a certain way to get the car to communicate with the Tech 2 or to power up or different things. You know, the wires would break in the connector. I would just kind of like take there's also like a card at the bottom of the Tech 2 as well, like I think between the main circuit board and the plug connector down there. Just kind of take that stuff apart and put it back together. You probably just have a bad connection in there somewhere, would be my guess.
That could be. I'll do that. I've got 3 different Saabs that I tried to connect it to, and I was thinking, well, maybe it's just my car, but I did that. But that's a good suggestion. I hesitate to take it apart, but I think I'll go ahead and take it apart and check the connectors and wiggle the cable and all that. So I appreciate that as a recommendation.
We did have a viewer comment that apparently the Chinese Tech 2s have a DC converter issue that seems to be quite common. Might be worth checking to see if anybody else in the group has one of those Chinese Tech 2s that has had the same issue.
I liked your buddy thing. I did not know about that. I've been a SobNet member now I did a 5-year membership when you offered it, and I was probably a member for 2 years before that, and I've renewed a couple of times. So I've been a member for a while, but I did not know the buddy thing, and I like the sounds of that. I'm going to investigate that. Thank you about that.
Yeah, great. Okay, great. I think we're going to wrap it up. We did an hour and a half instead of an hour. Glenn, you want to wrap things up for us?
Yeah, thanks. Well, first of all, Scott, I thought it was a great show today. We covered a lot, and it's so inspiring to hear how much the interest is there, and that we got such a great team. I want to thank you, Scott, and everyone, Chris, Jack, Dean, and I'll be reporting on the breaks. And next time I want to get into the vegans and vegan. And boy, I want to wish everybody a happy summer, happy Saab driving. And I am thinking about maybe having a get together up at Chris's. I was going to talk to Chris and Dean about maybe getting to have a little get together. You guys drive up to Dorset. Other than that, thank you, Scott. Thanks, everyone. I look forward to next time. And enjoy the summer. Enjoy your driving. And thanks for being with us today on the Saab and Driving Show.
Pleasure to be here.
Everyone take care.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Take good care.
Have fun.
Thank you. Take good care.